We doing, Vanessa?
We are live.
Thank you. Start the recording. Admit all. Give him a moment, and Stephen, you have the floor. And we are missing Teresa Vaughn tonight, it appears.
Thank you. Okay, the June 2nd, 2025 meeting of the Oregon Country Fair Board of Directors will come to order. And the first item of business is announcements. Are there any announcements? Please raise your hand in chat.
Oh, me.
Raise your hand in chat. Is that Arna? Do you want to make an announcement?
I do, but I'm just sort of slow at getting this into chat. There we go.
Go ahead.
I have sad news to announce. Terry Patrick, one of the founders of the fair, passed away a couple of weeks ago. He was an essential person at the fair in the very early years of the fair. We wouldn't have made it in those years without Terry, I think. Very important person, plus a really wonderful man. And back in those days when there were very few staff people, main camp people, there were just a few men who did basically a lot of the stuff. They were the fire crew and the construction crew and the decon crew and all of this work. I'm not just single-handedly, but getting some volunteers, but they were kind of in charge of all of that. He'll be really missed by those of us who knew him. So I know most people now don't know who Terry was, but I did want to mention it for the people who did, and for us to, a little appreciation for our real elders there who, founded the fair. So thank you.
Sorry, AJ.
Yeah, I just wanted to announce that the board had a closed session on the 17th of May and a closed work session on the 19th. Decisions were made in closed session.
Thank you very much. John Alexander, if anyone has an announcement, please raise your hand in chat.
Yeah, I just wanted to put out appreciation. I don't get up to pre-fair much. I was there last weekend and it's just it's amazing. Our volunteers, our artists, our staff, the wonderful patchwork and intentioned chaos of our kaleidoscope of hope. And so I wrote a quick haiku. They're quick. Miracle of all, our magnificent bright fair, one love, heal the world.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements? Please raise your hand in chat. Anyone who has an announcement? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the minutes. Is there any objection to accepting the minutes as submitted? Last call, is there any objection to accepting the minutes as submitted? Seeing none, the minutes are adopted by unanimous consent, and we'll move on to the agenda. Is there any objection to adopting the agenda as submitted?
I tried to put my hand up on the minutes.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to thank our secretary for the very accurate minutes. I really appreciate that. And I wanted to put a point of clarification. This isn't a change in the minutes, but I want to thank the team that we appointed as our board giving team, which is John Davis, John Steinhardt, Sandra, and Arna, for doing the board giving decision making on our behalf. And I just really appreciate them. So that's not a correction in the minutes, but a point of clarification for today's minutes.
Thank you. Moving on to the agenda. Is there any objection to adopting the agenda? Steve, who's Steve? Who raised their hand here with STEV?
It was me, Grumpy, sorry.
Okay, are you
I,
on minutes or agenda?
I'm sorry, I had a question when AJ declared or told us about the closed meetings, the board's meetings. I thought we had to know at least in general the subject, like personnel, and especially if decisions had been made, which he said, I think, are supposed to be told a decision about personnel or something general other than just a meeting and decisions were made. Sorry. And I'm sorry, it took me a while to get this all together.
So AJ, do you want to respond to that?
I have made an announcement pretty much the same way every time, but if we have a closed session, it's under the rules for a closed session, legal, personnel, or real estate. And so it was one of those. And our closed work sessions have to do with board work. And we chose to do closed sessions to do some board work on committees.
So I think if there's any rule regarding that, Grumpy, we'll have to deal with that in the future thing for future meetings.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Back to agenda. Is there any objection to adopting the agenda as submitted? Last call for any objection to accepting the agenda as submitted. Seeing none, the agenda is adopted by unanimous consent. Are there any member comments? Please raise your hand in chat. This would be for items not on old business today. Is there any member who wishes to speak to something not on old business today? Please raise your hand in chat. Last call. Last call for any member comments. Seeing none, we'll go to staff report. Kirsten.
Thank you, Stephen. Good evening, everybody. Hope you're getting excited about fair. I sure am. Things are really getting busy, having a good time, getting all ready for main camp to open next Saturday. All right, so I'm happy to report that we have made 2 new hires. John Kilmer has been hired as a temporary site employee, and he started on May 16th. We also hired Melissa Swan, who is here with us tonight. She has been hired as our new bookkeeper. I'm going to give her a moment to introduce herself. Of course, we're sad to see Norma retire, but of course, we're happy for Norma and her retirement. So I know she will enjoy her time. Melissa will start on June 4th. That's this Wednesday. She will train with Norma, who is retiring after this year's fair. And she brings a wealth of bookkeeping experience. She comes from us from some experience at Wow Hall, but I will let her introduce herself. Melissa, you have the floor.
Hello. I'm very excited to be working with Oregon Country Fair. I've been going to Country Fair since 1998. And like Kirsten said, I was the bookkeeper at the Wow Hall for 5 years right before COVID. So I do recognize some of you from the Wow Hall. I got an associate degree in accounting in 2014, and I'm currently working for an accountant firm called Accountants on the Go. Some of you might be familiar with them. And I'm just very excited to be joining the team.
Thank you so much, Melissa. We are so excited to have you, and you'll all get to meet her on site. She'll be working out of Doug's Green with the rest of the team. So be sure to stop in and introduce yourself. We're super excited to have you, Melissa. Thanks for joining us this evening as well. All right, so on to the rest of my report. I have some news that revenue is soft right now in ticket sales. We are starting to hold off on capital improvement projects that aren't health and safety related. I'm starting to put in as many expense controls as I can. Construction is going to try to fit as many small capital improvement projects as they can into their supplies and services budget. As you know, we passed a really large capital improvement project budget this year, and although we had a good year last year, we have to start taking steps to, control our expenses until our revenue is a little more visible. Any capital improvement projects that aren't completed this year due to expense reduction efforts will carry over to next year. I ask everyone to reduce spending where you are able. These are uncertain economic times due to the actions of the federal government, and it will take great effort from all of us to keep OCF in a positive financial position. I think we're all feeling it out there right now, and we just need to be especially cautious as this year as we see how the economy unfolds. We had a fire at the winery on Monday, May 19th. The Red Barn burned down. I did receive the fire marshal's report. When I wrote this report, I had not received it. I received it late last week, and the cause was undetermined. We suspect, it is our opinion, that the electric gator or electric all-terrain vehicle was the source, but we will never know because the fire marshal did not conclusively determine that that was the source. We will not be submitting an insurance claim. The building wasn't worth much, and it could compromise our ability to find an insurance underwriter because this would be our second claim in less than 3 years. Last year, as you know, I had difficulty finding property insurance due to our first claim. We did get property insurance this year, though. We are renewed. Just FYI, very important. No insurance, no fare. So we've got it. We're good. We are learning from this, and we are putting great efforts towards identifying fire and safety hazards across the site and correcting them. We've bought several 2 fire safe storage compartments for all of our flammables on site. I ask if you see something that is a fire or safety hazard, please report it to management immediately. It will take all of us to put on a safe event, and we appreciate your help in identifying and correcting hazards on site, especially as it's starting to get hot and dry. All hands on deck are needed to make this a safe event. The Sunshine Database, we now have all membership data into the database, and I believe Jeffrey Ramus will be giving us an update on that. This is a major accomplishment and represents the first time we have had all of our data in one database. As a reminder, the database closes on July 4th at midnight for all payments and entries into Cruise. The payment portal is open for Cruise and Boost, and you can log in, and I cited the address to log into. There are also numerous training videos for both Booths and Cruise, and I've cited that URL address as well in my report. And of course, please email Sunshine Help Desk at Oregon Country Fair if you discover a bug or something isn't working correctly. You need to contact Booth Reg or your coordinator if you have forgotten your username. And coordinators and booth reps need to turn on the payment option located under settings at the top of the screen when they are ready to let their crew or booth mates pay for their inventory that is assigned to them. Culture Jam, as I've reported, is this year, July 31st through August 7th. Applications are now closed, and we received a large number of applications, and now we're going into the lottery. We received more than we have room for, so then we lottery them in. Teddy Bear Picnic is Saturday, August 16th this year. Camping is allowed Saturday night only, except for crews that are supporting the event. Then they can camp, those crews can camp on Friday night. Again, if any crews need volunteers, the volunteer crew is working hard for you, and we encourage you to reach out to them if you need volunteers. For the event management and marketing, Oregon Public Broadcasting's Artbeat will have a show about OCF, and it will air on television on July 10th, 2025. There is a screening on June 25th at the McDonald Theater. We will sell tickets there. They have opened a second screening at 9 o'clock. The capacity is only 750 people, so go and get your tickets right away. The first screening is already sold out, even though the tickets are free. They're out of tickets. So 9 o'clock is your next opportunity on, again, June 25th, McDonald Theater, a 1-hour show about Oregon Country Fair, which they shot last year. Big shout out to Vanessa and the advertising team for facilitating all of that. Oregon Public Broadcasting also did Oregon Field Guide about Oregon Country Fair, and that will air on June 19th on OPB. I would say Teen Crew is still accepting applications, but really what I have to report is Teen Crew is actively doing their assignments, and so that's good to know. I don't know if they'll be accepting any late ones, but if you have anybody who has a teen that would like to be on Teen Crew, I encourage you to reach out to them directly. Ticket sales, we are about 30% off. We just kind of crested under than 30% this week. We do have a lot of things kicking in right now. So it's still a little too early to say how far off pace we will be. We've got the OPB special, we've got lots of ads hitting, lots of social media hitting. So we hope that this starts to kind of turn the corner here in the next couple of weeks. Tickets do go to full price on June 16th. So we'll be pushing a lot of buy early. Tickets are going to go up soon, and we should see an increase around that as well. All of the stage lineups are out, those released, and we did a push on Sunday, and I immediately saw tickets start selling because we sent a reminder to all of our past ticket buyers. Again, tickets can be purchased at the Eugene office on Mondays and Tuesdays only of each week from noon to 4, and we will stop selling tickets in the Eugene office on June 25th. As I said, main camp opens this Saturday, June 7th. Everything is coming together really wonderful. The site has been closed except for pre-fair working crews, and the gates are open 9A to 9P. I'm going to read the EAB reminder of the invasive species and wood guidelines. This is very important, as we have been spending the last year and a half working on an EAB task force to mitigate the effects and be prepared for the inevitability of the emerald ash borer arriving on our site. So I'm going to read this again. This will be my last time, I promise. Invasive species threaten our natural ecosystem and must never be brought on site. Clean camping gear, vehicles, and footwear before coming to the site to prevent spreading seeds of invasive plants. Non-native plants should not be introduced without permission of the site manager. To help prevent the invasion of the tree-killing beetle known as the emerald ash borer and other harmful insects, fungi, and blights, e.g. sudden oak, ash wood is prohibited unless previously coordinated with and approved by the OCF site manager. Crafters or booth representatives who utilize wood or plants in their products should contact the site manager for discussion of environmental safety protocols and best practices. Firewood, plants, soils, wood chips, wooden booth construction materials, and decoration materials, excluding debarked, kiln-dried, professionally milled lumber, can be vectors for disease and invasive species. To obtain firewood for burning on site, please contact quartermaster or site employees. Additionally, in efforts to prevent the spread of pests and disease, no firewood is to be taken from the site. Individuals observed bringing firewood from off-site or removing firewood from the site are subject to confiscation of firewood. With regards to invasive species and harmful fungi and blights, please inspect materials, products, clothing, shoes, and vehicles for potential invasive insects and seeds, and remove any potential vectors from relevant items before coming to the fair. Wooden pallets may also carry invasive species or be heavily treated with chemicals. Thereby, wood pallets are not to be brought to the site for use in campgrounds, other personal uses, or for firewood. Operations will coordinate the removal of wooden pallets brought to site via product delivery as they arrive. We have not put this officially into our guidelines, but we encourage people to wash their cars if they're coming from the northern part of the state, Woodburn, Hillsborough. So if you know anybody coming from the northern part of our state, ask them to wash their car before they drive onto site. All right. We also had, let me see if I got this email correctly. We also had a wonderful EAB sampling, tree sapling stewardship event on Saturday. It was really, really well attended. This was to identify and tag our young saplings that will be our future canopy. According to the results of this, we had 24 sapling stewardship sites. There were Marshall's Land, including Marshall's Landing, Recycling Camp and Recycling Dock, Traffic Camp, Lower Zen Acres, Community Village, and Southwoods. Range in the sites were 100 square feet to 7,800 square feet. 130 saplings were flagged. A little less than 40 of those were oaks. The lessons that were learned was we focused on trees and we don't spend too much time identifying, just flagging and counting shrubs. A lot more oaks in some areas than expected. We want to do a shout out to the participants. There was a huge turnout. We had Recycling, Community Village, Mothership, Marshall's Landing, Traffic, Lower Zen Acres, and a lot of task force members being represented at the site tree sapling stewardship walk on Saturday. We need guidance for campers who find marked trees. Post on website where QR code is listed. On the flagging, we put a QR code that takes you to the Emerald Ash Borer Task Force, and we're going to have some more information this week put up there in this regard. If you see a tree with a purple flag on it, that represents the Stewardship Sapling Tree Program. We ask you not to put a tent on top of that tree. You can put your tent right next to it, but anything that has been flagged, do not put a tent on top of it. Thank you very much. On to my final report. Here we go. The winery house. The foundation for the winery house is done. The manufactured home has been ordered, and we anticipate installation in September of 2025. All of our contracts are signed, and we're still waiting for our ODOT permit. The Lane County right-of-way permit has come through, and the Chela Mela Monkey Palace building permit is paid for and is just pending inspection. And I know a lot of work is being done to get that up. We're excited to see that completed. Thank you so much for your time this evening, and I look forward to seeing each and every one of you at the fair in main camp or on the path. Thank you.
Can I go, Stephen?
Yeah, hold on. Apparently my camera just failed. Yes, I want to make note that if I'm understanding correctly, Teresa Vaughn is now here and in attendance. And also ask Jeffrey to check his chat, and go ahead, Hillary.
Okay, thanks. I'll just touch a few things briefly. I really appreciate Kirsten's detailed reports. I think they're extremely informative. A reminder for people who have some kind of financial role to be in communication if, you know, anything starts happening that you have questions about, you know, wondering if this is normal or, you know, worrying about going over budget or something like that. Make sure you communicate with your budget liaison and or your staff liaison and your crew. Make sure that we're all in the loop about those type of things. Because of some posts I've seen on Facebook, I just wanted to reiterate to people, and I think most of the people who come to these meetings regularly know this, that we are controlling the number of people we have on site. You know, some people still feel like, oh, you know, it's too crowded for me, I'm done with the fair. I've seen that on the internet a couple of times. And you have a neighbor who's saying that, please remind them we are controlling the number of people we have on site, which is not to say there won't be a few lines for popular places, or sometimes it won't be crowded in certain areas, but we are not continuing to grow. We have fewer people on site than we had in 2018, and we've continued that. The only exception since 2018 is 2019, when we had that huge year. So if they came in 2019 and say it's too crowded, let them know, know that we are controlling it, and we are conscious of it. We are trying to make it a pleasant experience for everybody, you know, in particular the people who are coming during the day and enjoying that part of our event. I want to give a big welcome to Melissa. I'm very excited to see her and Norma sharing all the information about the bookkeeping. We have a very complicated system with a lot of people involved and a lot of chart of accounts and a lot of transactions. And, you know, I'm sorry, my dog is a little noisy back there. The organizational information that we have in the accounting system is really important to our organization. Kirsten is a vessel for that. I'm a vessel for that. Norma's a vessel for that. A lot of coordinators have a role. A lot of the staff do. And now Melissa will be a person who also will have that. And I just really appreciate it. And, you know, I just really honor that she's willing to do that. It's a big responsibility, and it's quite complicated, and it's very important for our ongoing ability. So thank you, Melissa, and big thanks to Norma. You know, Norma's carried water on this for a long time and just done a tremendous amount of work with a lot of dedication and integrity. And I really appreciate what she's done. Echoing John Alexander and Kirsten, I was on site some this weekend too, you know, working on the Monkey Palace. And it was a fabulous feeling. You know, there was a lot of people very excited to be there, a tremendous amount of activity and productivity already. I was very surprised, like, oh, that fence was down. Oh, look, that bench is already fixed. We've got people on crews who are so devoted. Not to say that the ones who are working early just are impressing me very much with how much they're doing. And just the fact of being there in person and doing what we do together is very, very exciting. And it's just a great dynamic, and really looking forward to seeing you on site. And just as an anecdote, seeing people on site is really, really different than seeing them on the internet. I had a conversation with somebody on Saturday, and finally when he introduced himself, turns out it was Jeff, who I've been in many, many meetings with, and I was not able to translate seeing somebody's face on a little box on my computer screen to seeing them in person, because it's very, very different to see people in person, and it's a valuable part of what we do. And go out there and do it and help build our community. Thanks. See you later.
Thank you. And we'll move on to reports, committee reports. I understand we're going to receive a verbal report on hybrid voting. Before that, is there any objection to accepting the written committee reports as submitted? Any objection to accepting the written committee reports as submitted? Raise your hand in chat if you have an objection. Seeing none, the committee reports are adopted by unanimous consent. And is there any objection to accepting the 2025 committee annual reports as submitted? Last call. Is there any objection to accepting the 2025 committee annual reports as submitted? Seeing none, the 2025 committee annual reports are accepted by unanimous consent, and we'll go to election update. Jeff Rames.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for a bit of time here. I'm going to take hopefully 10 minutes and maybe have some little time for some questions. So election committee and myself been working on selecting a vendor for online voting. We looked at about 12 or 13 different vendors, probably 2, 3, 4 of them only seriously. There's a wide variety of vendor types out there. So we ended up with kind of focusing on 3, and you might see this on the document that came with this meeting. The 3 were Election Buddy, Easy Vote, and Get Quorum. And some of the criteria that we went through, we wanted to make sure that we had a self-service option. That's where the savings is for the fair. We want to understand pricing, obviously, what kind of support we would get. We obviously went through some of the basic things that we're looking for: candidate statement support, voter code support, write-ins, email rejects, can a member change a vote, reminders, electronic reminders, the ability to customize a ballot, making sure that we understood the archive functions and kind of how an election result is reported on. So that and a whole bunch of other things, but those are the main things we've focused on. Easy Vote and Election Buddy were pretty much the same. They provide the same functionality. We can run an election in the fair with either one. Get Quorum, the only reason I kind of added those, they don't really have a self-service option, but I wanted to talk to somebody about them just doing the election. And we would just hand the whole thing to them. Weren't really interested in doing that, but we wanted to spend a little time to see what that would look like and what it would cost. And as we thought, it's pretty expensive. So pricing, they have subscriptions and they have cost per election. Subscriptions would be if you're running a whole bunch of different elections all year, you can buy a subscription and that's all you pay for 5, 10, 12 elections, depending on what you're doing. We're really right now only having one election, so there was no reason to do that. So if you look at Election Buddy, we can run this election with about 5,500 people for $750. And that's it. Easy Vote was not too far off. Their one vote or one election for that many ballots was about $1,300. We're anticipating that about 10% of our voting membership will have to get mail-in ballots. We're estimating that would cost us about, I don't know, $1,000, $1,500. Kind of depends on how many we get. We've got some supplies left over from last year, so we wouldn't have to buy a bunch of things. So we're thinking that if we go with one of these and do a mail-in ballot for about 10% of the membership, we're going to spend $2,500, maybe $2,000. So if we can do that, Kirsten will give you back $6,000 or $7,000 for the soft revenue. So I met with the election committee this week. We went over all the information. We bounced a couple of questions back to EasyVote and Election Buddy today or over the weekend. We got results back today. Didn't really change anything. We just wanted some more clarification on some functionality. So we reached a consensus in the election committee that, yeah, these two are pretty much the same. No use spending more money than we need to. So I think we're going to go with Election Buddy. And what's interesting about this tool is we don't really have to do anything. I've already signed on to both of these. I've already run dummy elections within the staff and the election committee. We just need to log on to this application that we choose, and we need to start building our own election. There's a bunch of settings. Eventually, candidate statements will come. We'll post those. Candidate pictures if we choose to do that. And so we're just going to start building this election right away, start playing with the settings, and we're going to fine tune it all the way through the summer, or we're just going to test it and test it and test it. And that's by tweaking it and running elections. We can have the election committee be the people that vote, or staff, or even I'd like to do an election with the board. So you get an idea what it looks like on the receiver's end. So once we don't have to pay anything, there's no contract to sign. Once we set up our election and we hit the go button, all we have to do is give them a credit card number. They'll invoice us if that's what we want, but we just got to give them a credit card number. And once that's in there, the emails go out to everybody that's a member and has an email address. And so pretty straightforward. I've checked on the sharing information. Obviously, these organizations would have to have very strict information sharing rules, and they just don't. It's just hands down, absolutely not. They never do. And I've got documentation from both these organizations on that issue. So what's this going to look like? We're going to start playing with Election Buddy. We're going to start structuring an election. We're going to start testing it. And that's just going to be ongoing. Test it. Data is going to be the huge work all summer. We're pulling together a bunch of different pieces. We just want to make sure that it's a good sound list before we load it up to the system. We've also got to run a hybrid mail-in approach here, along with doing this to, I don't know, 400 to 700 people. We're not sure yet. And at that point, we'll pull the trigger when the date comes here in, well, whatever it is, September, October. So questions?
AJ, do you want to allot time for Q&A here?
Yeah, I was just about to step in real quick. I think we weren't prepared for this. This is more like a work session. If we do question answer sort of thing, I would like to reserve that for a different time so we can get to the business of the board right now.
So how about, Jeffrey, we ask people to email elections? Is that where you'd want it to go?
Or my address, email address, yeah. So that'd be fine.
Okay, yeah. So if you have questions, please email them to elections at OregonCountryFair.org. And we'll move on to old business. First item of old business is to amend section 4 and 9 of the OCF data privacy policy, sponsored by John Steinhardt, Kevin Levy, John Govsky, Sandra Bauer, and AJ Jackson. Who would like to make the motion? John.
There's a bunch of other people who have hands ahead of me. I don't know what they're for. I don't know if
I'm not sure either. So sorry, I lost a little track here because the hands are going up before I'm done. John Govsky, did you want to make this motion?
I'm making the motion.
I think this was for questions that we didn't do. So let's just cross those out, John.
That was an old hand I had. So
yeah, you're making the motion. Who's seconding? Somebody want a second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved by John Steinhardt and seconded by Sandra. Is there anybody who wants to take a couple of minutes and provide an introduction to this motion? John.
Before I get into that, I just wanted to make a couple of comments. 3 members spoke about the motion at the last board meeting, and I reached out to all of them by email, and I want to thank Grumpy for actually responding with suggested language. And while it's a little bit of a non sequitur, this got me thinking about life lessons that I learned from watching Saturday morning cartoons as a kid. Important ones, like as a skier, Roadrunner taught me that if I go over a cliff, it's fine as long as I don't look down. But I was really thinking about Dick Tracy, who had this amazing power to, when he got in a tough situation, he could just say, hold everything, and the world would stop while he figured it out. But a lot of the stuff we do with the board is on a tight schedule. We have to get, for instance, this motion done in order to make online voting work. And I've said many a time, I really appreciate it once we have new business on the agenda, if people contact the board, because we can't always stop what we're doing because somebody shows up at a board meeting and says, hold everything. So I'd really appreciate it if people could provide us feedback earlier. I think the motion was read out at the last meeting. It's long, so I don't really want to read the whole thing right now. This is a motion to amend our policy to allow us to share data with third parties, for example, for the purpose of doing the hybrid voting. I do want to make an amendment to the motion, which is not exactly the one that was in the board packet, so I put it in the chat here. There was a little bit of language in there that didn't work, and if I could, I guess somebody should try to second the motion to amend before.
Let's fit. Are you done with your summary?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, and you're moving to? So we're sort of made our own process about this here because of member input. So are you seeking to amend the motion with what you placed in chat?
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved by John Steiner and seconded by Sandra Bauer to amend the motion with the language in chat, which specifically addresses item 4 of the motion, and says, I'm going to read it because it's short enough. We do not share your personal information except as necessary to conduct our business or as required by law. We only share your information with parties whose terms meet our requirements. We will not share your information with any party that does not meet our requirements without the consent of all affected individuals. So,
can I explain this for a second?
What?
Can I explain this for a second?
Concisely, yes.
Yeah. So basically, the way we had thought about rewording this said we wouldn't share information with people that didn't agree to our terms and conditions. But really, we have no power to do that. We can't go to Election Buddy and say, sign a contract with our terms and conditions or we won't use you. We have to accept theirs. So I've changed this language to reflect that. I've also came to realize there are situations where we can't make any sort of agreements on terms and conditions. An example would be we do background checks on people that volunteer to be on the child care crew. We have no ability to tell some outside organization, sign this agreement with us or we won't let you do our background checks. So in that case, we need to ask people that want to serve on that crew, can we share your information with a third party? We've been doing this for years, but this is just clarifying it. So anyway, I do want to thank Sandra for her support of the Second Amendment.
Thank you. And so is there any member input on this amendment, specifically on the language in chat? Any member input? Last call for member input. This is member input on the amendment to the motion. Seeing none, we'll go to board discussion. Is there any board discussion on this amendment? Raise your hand in chat. Is there any board discussion? Last call for board discussion. John Alexander.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff, for your great report on the election stuff, and John for that thorough description of this. On this amendment, I guess this is where this would go. Jeff, you had mentioned that, and I think John repeated that we can't control what these guys, what their policies, and that they abide by our privacy policies. But we can control what kind of data are given to them, and we could do, these are the data that need to go to them, and accept any kind of a data release, on an as needed basis. So I'm not clear what changed about this amendment to allow us to send information and not necessarily identifying what specific information to this third party voting group, and how is it done? What's the last sentence of this? I'm toggling back and forth without whatever the last sentence of this amendment says.
Which says, we will not share your information with any party that does not meet our requirements without the consent of all affected individuals.
So that means that if we sent this information to the voting folks that don't fulfill our requirements, we need the consent of all affected individuals?
That's how it reads to me.
Wow. And how would we get that?
John, you're muted.
I was saying there's a little bit of confusion, and the muting was part of that. So what this amendment says is that, for example, when we select a voting vendor, we're going to select one whose terms and conditions we like. Okay, and that's what we would do for pretty much any situation like this, because we can't control their terms and conditions. Okay, but we have situations, again, like doing background checks for childcare. I don't know whether driver's license information for people that drive fair vehicles having to possibly be disclosed to insurance companies. Those are small situations, not tens of thousands of people, where we might actually have to ask for individual consent because we don't have any choice in what the third party is going to do. With the voting thing, I trust that Jeff and the election committee will select a vendor whose terms and conditions we can live with. The last sentence is there for other situations, again, background checks, insurance, other things like that. Hope that explains it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other board discussion on the amendment? Last call for board discussion on the amendment. Seeing none, we're going to go to a vote. Sandra,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Paxton,
Yes.
AJ,
Yes.
John Davis,
Yes.
John Steinhardt,
Yes.
John Govsky,
Yes.
John Alexander,
Yes.
Teresa Vaughn,
Yes.
Arna,
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes.
The amendment passes unanimously. We're on to the policy as a whole. Is there any member input on the proposed changes to the privacy policy as amended? Any member input, please raise your hand in chat. Any member input on the proposed changes to the privacy policy as amended? Please raise your hand in chat. Seeing none, we'll go to board discussion. Is there any board discussion on the privacy policy changes as amended? The proposal for privacy policy changes. Any board discussion? AJ.
I think it has to be said. This is a big thing. And we're in June, and I wonder how many of our membership folks are actually paying attention right now in June. And so I'm confused myself about just what is this fixing? And I wonder if we can be very clear about, does this policy allow us to, does this have to be passed in order for us to do the election, online election? That's, I guess, my question.
Thank you. John Alexander.
Yeah, I think along those lines, I think the sense of urgency that was talked about before, I think we pushed a lot of motions through with not a lot of discussion. And I think that if we need to get an election off, we can get a motion on the table that says this is the data set that we're going to share, or these are the characteristics of a data set we're going to share for these guys, and get that off. And if this is something that people are concerned about, I don't think we need a sense of rush for anything like this, that the elections can be done. This is not hinging, the elections, I don't believe, are hinging on this. I guess my other question is, it was mentioned at some point, I think, and maybe AJ, you mentioned this when we did not have discussion about the great report that Jeff gave, is that maybe that will become a work session, and maybe this could be wrapped into that as a work session, because there is a lot here. This is complicated, and I actually, I'm sure we all took some extra time to read this one and get back. It doesn't reference the original document. You have to go find it on the website. Not too difficult, but I want to eliminate our a false sense of urgency, if there really isn't one, with regards to we can make an election happen with a one-off vote to release a data set to a company.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Kirsten because she hasn't spoken yet, John, and I'll come back to you.
Sorry, thank you. So this data policy, privacy policy, was passed in its entirety by the board some time ago. The sections that are being revised are repeated verbatim as they currently read and how they are amended in the board motions documents. The changes that are being requested at this juncture are actually very minimal, but are very important for us to be able to legally release email addresses for a hybrid voting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. John Steinhardt.
Yeah, Kirsten pretty much covered that. The whole motion was in the board packet, John, so you should have been able to see it. But the original privacy policy said we wouldn't disclose any information to outside parties. This is an amendment to the motion, or to the original policy, to say except under certain circumstances, so that we can do things like have hybrid elections. And it is urgent. Even if we wanted to do some one-off motion, by the time it went new business, old business, et cetera, we'd be running right up against the election. So I think this is actually a reasonable thing. I'll remind everybody, we discussed this whole thing at length at the last board meeting, so there really shouldn't be any surprises here except for the amended language. Thanks.
Thank you. Arna.
I guess my question really is for Jeff. When do you need this passed by? Does it need to be passed tonight? Can it be passed in August? If some board members want more time for membership input. And I mean, I don't want to put you in a crunch. And I feel you're the best person to answer this question.
Can we be quick about that, Jeff? Can you answer concisely what you need? I'm not sure if this is your spot.
Well, I didn't raise the issue. It was kind of bubbling around prior to me, but yeah, I mean, the bylaws are pretty straight. We're not going to be sharing information until we load up an email list to this application. And that's going to be, my guess, sometime in September. So that'd be the first time we'd be doing this. It needs to be done either way. I don't see why it is any different the 1st September. So.
Okay, thank you.
AJ.
Yeah, I guess my I'm in favor of this now that I've gotten that explanation. My concern was that I've heard a lot of chatter about it and the fact that we didn't have one membership question or response to it concerned me. And so that's was my draw. I know we've talked about it, but I mean, this is a big deal no matter how you see it, and that just surprised me.
Thank you, AJ. Paxton.
I'm fully in support of this, both the changes in the policy, because it really brings it more up to date for what we deal with and what we have to deal with in the real world. I like the changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other board discussion? John Steinhardt.
Yeah, I would prefer not to push this off, because while we could say, oh, we could vote about it in August and September, what if somebody raises an issue then and it doesn't pass? If we're not going to be able to do a hybrid election, we ought to know now, not the day before. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Any other board discussion? Last call for board discussion. Seeing none, we'll proceed to a vote. This is on the as amended changes, as the amendment to the privacy policy as amended. Sandra.
I'm a yes.
George.
All right.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Paxton.
Yes.
AJ.
Yes.
John Davis.
Yes.
John Steinhardt.
Yes.
John Govsky.
Yes.
John Alexander.
Yes.
Teresa Vaughn.
Yes.
Arna.
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes.
And the motion passes unanimously. Moving on to the next item of old business, it's the OCF Board Code of Conduct, sponsored by AJ Jackson, Sandra Bauer, Teresa Vaughn, John Davis, Kevin Levy. Who would like to make this motion? Somebody?
I'll make the motion.
Moved by Sandra Bauer. Who would like to second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by AJ. Is there anyone who wants to provide a brief introduction to this motion before we go to member input?
I'll do that. So we've been thinking about we have a code of conduct for the organization, and we thought that we should rightly have one for the board as well. We spent some time thinking about it and had a lot of different options that we considered, and we came up with the code of conduct that you see here. It is pretty basic, but it's important to have, and it's important to hold ourselves accountable. I don't think it needs to be read. It's pretty long. Or what do you think about that?
It's available in writing. People can find it on the website.
Okay, yeah. So
unless the board wants it read.
I urge you to pass. It's a living document. We can continue to adapt it as necessary, but this puts something on the table, and I think it's important. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any member input on this board code of conduct? Any member input, please raise your hand in chat.
I can't raise my hand for some reason.
Okay, go ahead, Spirit.
Sorry about that. My phone is acting funny. Hi, everyone. I want to say good job. It is about time. This actually came up when we spent, I won't say how many thousands of dollars on a board consultant back when I was on the board. And at that time, we had a board unwilling to even consider it, at least half a board unwilling to consider it. And it really is so important. And I just commend you all, and I really hope that you pass this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other member input? Please raise your hand in chat. Last call for member input on the OCF Board Code of Conduct. Okay, seeing none, we're going to go to board discussion. Is there any board discussion? Please raise your hand in chat. John Alexander.
You're muted.
You're muted,
John.
Well, that whole spirited appreciation for Spirit's appreciation for this went muted. So thank you, Spirit, for that. I'll lighten up a little bit here on this, but I still don't think that this codes of conduct is ready for approval. And my concern is that there's a lack of accountability measures. And I also think we need to revisit the process that led to this draft. And I think we still might need a little bit more input. There was a subcommittee that was formed in 2022, including Tom, Arna, Paxton, and myself. And we developed a draft of this and had a public meeting about it that was really well attended. And coming out of that meeting, we had specific questions for the board to address. However, the topic was dropped for a couple years and resurfaced during a recent closed work session. And I think I'm allowed to at least say that. I believe that we took a step backwards in that situation. After 2 years, we need an open session to talk to our membership about the input that they gave us about the original code of conducts that we wrote. The committee that designed and developed this and facilitated that open session was left out of drafting this version before the closed session was happened, and we weren't consulted in the session's agenda. And it resulted in the session, in my opinion, not adequately addressing the key questions that came out of our public meeting. Even if we had, we don't have adequate minutes from those discussions that we had. And so we really don't have anything to go off of ourselves or to show the membership with regards to the discussion we had to come up with this draft and what was left for this draft. For example, we still haven't figured out models of accountability, and therefore the subject appears to just be missing from this. And I think this needs public discussion from our membership about how we as a board are going to hold ourselves accountable to this code of conduct. For me, accountability means individuals and the board acknowledges repeated code of conduct violations amongst ourselves in a transparent and a complete way. So here I think we are. We're being asked to vote on something that we can all agree on, I don't think. And even worse, I don't think we're even clear about what aspects of this document we disagree on. Therefore, I think this needs more work, and I hope this motion is withdrawn until we have a public session and more discussion, especially about accountability and the other subjects that came up during our well-attended work session that we had in this during our 22-23 term. Thank you.
Thank you. Paxton.
Yeah, in just a second. I have quite a slightly different viewpoint on this. To me, most of this, the board code of conduct was stuff that was taught us through our board training, particularly by Russell, when we had him doing our training, who was a fair lawyer for many years in the 90s and end of the 2000s. But anyway, this just really kind of codifies what we were told that we should be doing over the, in the board training. So I don't quibble much with this at all. To me, it's just what's expected of us and really should be. I disagree with the accountability problem. Over the years, I've been on the board a lot, and if somebody in the board messes up, we have taken them to task. But you never hear about that, because that's often it's personnel issue. And so it's worked well in the past, in my opinion. I don't think we necessarily need to define, violations and penalties and stuff like that. This is what's expected of the board, and I think it should be expected of the board. I don't really think it needs to be written down, but I see that we feel that need to do that. So I support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Paxton. Arna.
So I was on the original group that wrote the code of conduct for the board, and and it definitely needed a rewrite. But I too was a little unhappy how it happened, that a couple of people rewrote it, never sent it back to the original group to kind of look at or involve us. I just didn't like that process all that much. It just went to the board. And I think it lost a couple of things that it needed to have, that were in the original. And one that comes to mind right away is, we always talked about, you have to wear your board hat at all times. It's the overarching hat that you wear. You can be like Bartholomew Cubbins and have 500 hats, but it's the board hat that matters. It's not, your crew or your committee or your booth. You always board member first. That's not really emphasized in this. There's a couple of other things. And I too think there's a lack of accountability in this. It feels more performative to me than anything else. Because I think that's what it is. It's just performative. I kind of wanted something that had some accountability, and we did struggle with that in the first round of writing one. What could be the accountability? And I was very disappointed that we talked about this in a closed session, that this was, I thought, not the place to discuss what was in this code of conduct. I thought it should be done in an open work session. And as John said, quite a few members had shown up at that session and given us comments and suggestions. And those notes were never passed on to the next writers because I didn't even know they were rewriting it. And so, those notes never got to them because they never asked for them. And I couldn't really give them to them. So I'm not trying to be really critical of, the people involved in this. I just didn't like the process. And I really don't like that there's no accountability here. I do think there should be a board code of conduct, and I've thought this for years. I don't know how I'm going to vote on this at this point. Because as I say, I really don't think, John, I am speaking to the motion because I'm speaking to how the motion was formed.
Okay.
I'm not telling stories about my TV watching in the past. So, I think that, as I say, I really wanted more accountability in this. I'll leave it alone at this point.
Thank you. And I prefer, please don't go respond directly to John. And John, I will say that everything she said was germane, and please do not raise such objections in chat. Teresa Vaughn.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm open to further conversation about accountability, but that in no way would make me not vote to start this process and get this going. I don't see those as separate things. Like, if we want more, we can make adaptations in the future, but it's time to start the process. It's time to have some board, I consider, if I sign my name, accountability. So it is the beginning of accountability, and it is the beginning of clarity about what we can agree to. And I really would urge everyone to move forward with support of having some board accountability here.
Thank you. And let's see, John Steinhardt.
I kind of feel like the whole code of conduct discussion is reactive to a very divisive board some years ago. We already have accountability in our bylaws, and if we were to have had some accountability with a lower threshold than our supermajority, half the board would have been called up at every single meeting for something or other, and it would have been very counterproductive, and nothing would have happened, and it would have just given people a platform to perform at board meetings, I guess. So I think code of conduct sounds great, but I can't support this. First of all, I don't expect it to change anybody's behavior, and I have a number of specific reasons. One of which is a lot of the terms in it are just undefined. And without that, anytime somebody wants to call somebody to task on the code of conduct, we're going to have an argument about, well, what did the term mean? And that's not productive for us. So I think the terms need to be defined. I think it's largely performative, and I'm not a director as a performance because I want to, engage in a performance art. Most of this code just restates the law and the bylaws, and we're actually already obligated to do that. So saying it again doesn't change anything. To me, the code actually creates some unresolvable conflicts. So we all have a legal duty of care to the organization, independent of the code of conduct, because it's the law. But this code of conduct says we can't engage in divisive behavior, which may mean calling somebody out, doing something that is against the interest of the organization. And I can't think about abiding by a code where I might have to say, I can't do my duty of care because it might offend somebody. I mean, I'd be violating the law. I could get sued. The fair could get sued for that. So it just doesn't work for me. On number 7 in the code where it says begins board members shall represent, that's a new power to the board members. We don't actually represent the fair. I'm not looking for a code of conduct to give me that authority. And so I really love to be serving on a board where everybody conducted themselves and worked together. But I think, the only real way to deal with that is for the members to make decisions at election time. So I can't support this. And I'm sorry, because I know it would look good to have one, but I just don't see it, accomplishing anything. So that's it.
Thank you. AJ.
Yeah, so I'm in full support of this. I don't think it's performative at all. I don't think what's been presented in the bylaws has been working for the organization, because had it been working, we wouldn't be having this discussion right now. And I want to thank the people that have ciphered through all the many different conversations over the many years to try to come up with something that the board could acknowledge to move us forward. This is about not, if we don't pass this, we're right back at the beginning, stuck with this whole idea of like nothing, and nothing hasn't been working for us. It just hasn't been working for us. So I see this as an effort by the board to move us forward in learning how to work together and learning how to treat each other and treat our responsibilities. It's not perfect. If we're waiting for perfection, none of us will be here when that happens. And so I encourage us all to just take a pause and think of this as something, as a start to us improving, or at least acknowledging that we do have responsibilities to this organization and to each other to abide by. And I think that's important.
Thank you, AJ. Is there any other board discussion? Raise your hand in chat. It's the last call for board discussion. Last call for board discussion. Kevin.
Yeah, thanks everybody. So yeah, I like this document. I think it really, accountability is built into it. Really it is us signing on to say that we're going to do what we're supposed to do anyways. And that's the idea. Now, if we talk about accountability and want to kind of add some more things in there, when we start adding some, I don't want to say hardcore, but some real accountability into this document, it makes it a whole different document. It makes it a whole different piece, and it adds different power elements to it that can be abused. And the point of this is about us being in agreement to work with each other, regardless of whether we agree or not agree. And while it may feel performative to others and it feels accountable to others, it's about us working together. It's about setting the precedent for the next boards that come down, and it's about them saying like, okay, you know what, there's an expectation here that we are here to work with each other and not just me and my island or you or them or whatever. And so I think it's a good start. Like Teresa was saying, I think that it's, like Sandra said, it's a living document. We can keep modifying it and perfecting it over the years and years. And we could be the ones that start it for the next ones. So that's how I'm looking at it. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm going to go to John Govsky because he hasn't spoken yet.
You know, when I look at it, there's nothing in here that's really objectionable. And I hear the concerns about accountability and transparency. I think just to get this in place is fine. And I look at it, like others have said, as an iterative process, and we will then see how it needs to be amended. And if more accountability needs to be put in, we can have that discussion and decide to amend it if that's appropriate. But I think just getting something in place right now is fine. I don't see anything objectionable in this. I don't have all the history with this that some people have. So I don't have those attachments or non-attachments. I just look at it at face value and it's like, okay, if we want to get something in place for now, it's good enough, I think. And yes, we can improve it. So thanks.
Thank you, John Alexander.
Thanks a lot. You know, having worked on this and been committed to this for 3 years, I'd hate to see it let go. I would love to see us maybe adopt it as a working document and commit to at least revisiting it at a retreat. I think I'm just going to mention one thing on accountability. In the past, accountability's been had, oh yeah, I'll talk to that person, somebody in an officer position or something like that. Oh yeah, I'll do that. But then we see repeated violations of, let's say, regular meeting norms, where we use the tools of the meetings as we've been directed to use the tools of the meeting by the people running the meeting, and they continue to be violated and violated. So just talking to people on the side, sidebars don't work. I'm not interested in us burdening fair cares with our own petty little things that we have going on the board. So I really do think that some level of accountability, even if it's just us acknowledging to ourselves that a violation has been had and whether we agree or not that it's been had. So I would move to pass this as a working document to be revisited within the year with our membership. Because at our membership meeting, the membership wanted accountability, and the membership wanted some other kind of things that we did not discuss, and we came out of our last meeting with no decisions about what we agreed and disagreed on. And there's some structured questions that the committee came up with that needed to be talked about. So I guess I'll ask for an amendment that this passes as a working document to be revisited with the membership within a year.
Okay, so hold on, everybody. John, I need to know exactly what that means. Does that mean that the code of conduct would be adopted, but with a commitment to revisit it within a year? What does it mean to be a working document?
This is. I think that everybody said they wanted to bring this forward as this is a good first step.
Okay.
I think so. It's a working document to be revisited with our membership within a year. That's
okay. I'm going to ask you to, just for the clarity of going forward, I want to ask you to modify your motion to amend the motion to simply, because if it's adopted, if it's in force, then it's adopted. So I'm going to ask you to amend your motion to amend this to a commitment to revisit the document in a year, right? Because you'll still be passing it. That's what the working document is the thing I'm stuck on. You'll still be passing it. So what you want to do is add a rider onto this that says this will be revisited in a year.
With the membership.
With the membership. Is that?
Yeah, thank you. However you think it's best, Stephen. You're the you know
so,
best.
John has moved to amend the motion to include a requirement that this board code of conduct be revisited with the membership within 1 year. Within. Yeah. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by John Alexander and seconded by Arna. We are discussing now whether or not to amend this motion to require the board code of conduct to be revisited with the membership within a year. Is there any member input on that? Raise your hand in chat. Any member input on this amendment to the motion? Anne.
I'd like to say that I support this amendment, and I thank everybody who's been working on it. And I also understand when things move to a different group and they get changed without any previous input. And that's always a danger because the people who came before have a lot of information. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Is there any other member input? Last call for member input on the amendment to this motion. Spirit.
Yeah, I just want to say that, this is one of those things where it has been posted. There was time for member input. This is just a beginning. It is just a standard of expectations. It's not going to hurt anything to have it there. But I do think that it could come in handy in a worst case scenario. And especially as we get new board members on with the hybrid voting.
Okay, so Spirit, we're specifically talking about the change to requirement to revisit this within a year.
Okay, I thought it was with membership, so that's what I was talking
Yeah,
about.
with
Okay.
the membership. It is, but it's specifically about revisiting.
Yeah. No, I don't support this, but I'm not voting.
Okay. All right, thank you. Is there any other member input on the change to this motion to require it be revisited within a year with the membership? Last call? Seeing none, we'll go to board discussion. We're specifically discussing whether or not to alter this motion to require it to be revisited with the membership within a year. Arna.
Well, I like this amendment. It is, many of you said this is a living document and that this is a first step. So let's sort of make it that our first step. We can revisit this in a year. We can decide if we like it. And we can get membership feedback on it. I think this is helpful for us. And it makes us do that. By adding the amendment to the motion, it will make us do that. Otherwise, I fear that we will never take this up again unless something terrible happens. And it will never go to the membership. And so I am in favor of this motion. I think it does get us going with the code of conduct as it stands now. And then, we sometime within the next year, we'll look at it again with fresh eyes and see if it's working for us or not and see what the membership thinks. I think it's a really good amendment for us. Thanks.
Thank you. Sandra.
Well, I don't support this amendment. I don't think we need to continue making all of these policies so complicated. I think that you elect the board to do the job of the board, and you have to trust them to do that job. And if we are working on this code of conduct and we feel that there's deficits that need to be addressed and cured, then the board will bring it back up. And I don't think we need to have an amendment to force the issue. I think we're adults in the room, and I think we know how to do the work. And I think we should just pass the code of conduct. It's a good code of conduct. It's fairly normal in the, if you look at code of conducts for other organizations, ours measures up. And I wanted to say that after this draft of this code of conduct was presented to the board, there was plenty of time for other board members to give feedback, and other board members asked for feedback and actually asked us to put it off for a month so that they could give feedback, which we granted, and we still didn't get the feedback. And so there was plenty of opportunity for people to, add on to this. And I just don't think it needs to be continually dragged out. I think we need to pass it, and I think we need to have it, and I hope you vote for it. Thank you.
Okay. I see AJ put his hand down. Is there any other board discussion? I see Paxton and John Alexander. Paxton.
I'm inclined to agree with Sandra here. I would just as soon pass this and deal with it. If there's infractions and stuff like that, many of the times they will not be dealt with by the membership. They'll be dealt with directly by the board because it's an infraction of the board work. So it shouldn't be part of the membership evaluation, in my opinion. I'm happy to I would not have any problem reviewing this in a year, but I just don't see that as necessary. So I'm going to vote against the amendment. Thank you.
John Alexander.
Yeah, I agree. The fractions are not going to go in front of the membership, but I'm just going to leave it at it was inappropriate for us to have these discussions not in front of the membership. Why don't we want to talk about our own code of conducts and our own accountability in front of the membership? That concerns me. And that's what it feels like, but I've done what I can do. So I appreciate everybody who's put everything into it. I do appreciate the rewrite that was done, even though the process could have gone a little differently. And I just think there's some specific questions that still need to be addressed based on our last work session that we had with the membership that never got addressed. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. Sandra.
No.
George.
No.
Paxton.
No.
AJ.
No.
John Davis.
No.
John Steinhardt.
No.
John Govsky.
No.
John Alexander.
Yes.
Teresa Vaughn.
Yes.
Arna.
Yes.
Kevin.
No.
The motion fails. The amendment to the motion fails with Sandra, George, Paxton, AJ, John Davis, John Steinhardt, John Govsky, and Kevin voting no. And we will go back to the main motion on the board code of conduct. And we are in board discussion. Is there any more discussion on the board code of conduct motion? Raise your hand in chat. AJ.
I call the question.
Okay. Let me ask if there's anyone else who wants to speak, because if there was no one else who wants to speak, we'll just go to a vote.
In the past, you said if there was anybody on the stack. There was nobody.
Right. There was no one on the stack, so I was about to go to a vote. Calling the question means we would have to vote on whether or not to stop the discussion, and if there's no more discussion, so I'll ask, is there anybody else who wants to speak? If no one raises their hand, we'll just go to a vote. Okay, so we will proceed to a vote on the main motion. Sandra.
Yes.
George.
Yes.
Paxton.
Yes.
AJ.
Yes.
John Davis.
Yes.
John Steinhardt.
No.
John Govsky.
Yes.
John Alexander.
Yes.
Teresa Vaughn.
Yes.
Arna Shaw.
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes.
Motion passes with John Steinhardt voting no. We are on to the third item of old business. Board amends Article 5, Section 2, Paragraph A of the bylaws, which is to add any individual is eligible for membership if the individual is at least 18 years of age, registered with the OCF, and has received either a wristband or other fair camping pass or verifiable workday pass in one of 3 previous fairs, or is a verified elder in accordance with OCF elder policy. That is the amended language. Is there who would like to make this motion?
I'll make it.
Made by John Steinhardt. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
That was Sandra. Moved by John Steinhardt and seconded by Sandra Bauer. I know that John would like to make a PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to ask, is there any objection to receiving this presentation by the board?
I object. I don't know what it is, and I know John has a viewpoint here on this motion. So I'm not comfortable with the presentation.
Okay. So he says it is factual, but there is an objection. We can either debate it, or we can simply go to a vote on whether or not to allow the presentation to be made.
Can I have a point of clarity?
Yeah.
Does it relate to any amendments to this motion?
that I don't know the answer to that. The question here is whether or not to receive a PowerPoint presentation on the motion by a member. So I'm just gonna go to a vote of who's willing to who's willing to receive.
Can
that
I speak for a
presentation.
minute, Steve?
Well, it's okay.
I just think it's unfair to kind of, put this out there on us at the last minute, not knowing about it. Because I know that John does have a viewpoint on this motion, which is, in opposition to mine. If I had known that he was going to do a PowerPoint presentation in advance, I might have presented my own. I think it's unfair for a board member to just come in like this with a presentation. Now, he says it's factual, but I don't really know that. I haven't seen it. And a lot of times people think that something is factual, but it is still biased in how it's presented. So I am uncomfortable with this.
Okay.
No offense to you, John. It's just, I don't like how this is being done at all. So I do object.
Thank you. And so that encapsulates, what I've been trying to share with the board here, and this sort of came up at the last minute, so I'm not sure everyone was on the same page. But the issue is that when somebody gets to grab the screen and do a PowerPoint presentation on a motion, that's like an opportunity for special treatment on how you get to present, and somebody who's in opposition may not get that same opportunity and feel stymied by it. And it has happened before, so we're trying to have the board accept a presentation in order to receive it. I will ask that we try and keep our conversation very narrow, concise, and simply about whether or not to receive this presentation. And I believe AJ is the next person.
Hand up.
Unfortunately, I did not receive notification of this presentation before this meeting, and whether I agree or disagree has no, it doesn't play a factor in the reason why I would say I can't agree with accepting this. As a facilitator of our board meetings, it's really important that I know ahead of time when there's going to be a presentation such as this. And I would call it across the board for anybody on the board who's wanting to do a presentation. It is important that you let me know ahead of time in our open meetings. That is one of my sole responsibilities, is the facilitation of this meeting. So I can't agree with this presentation today because it was not presented to me earlier.
And I still I'm seeking to try and have the board accept presentations if they're going to be made, so that it's a choice. John Steinhardt.
I think this is a little bit mischaracterized. It's not a PowerPoint presentation. I don't use PowerPoint. It is a single chart about voting membership age and who votes at the fair. It's data that's never been seen before. I am perfectly happy to spend 15 minutes talking through it instead of 30 seconds showing the data. Doesn't matter to me, up to you guys. Got useful data that you've never seen before.
Okay, so thank you. And to clarification here is that it's a single chart you want to present graphically. Teresa.
Well, as the person who has done several presentations, and as a teacher, I'm a little frightened that people are not willing to look at a presentation. I think it is the standard in the way people operate these days is you show presentations. And I know it's 4 o'clock in the morning for me, and maybe I'm not thinking clearly, but I think information and data is always good. And I don't think we should be saying we're not willing to look at data that's presented. So I'm a little frightened by this conversation, to tell you the truth.
Thank you. Arna.
Well, I'm also curious if this is data that John has gotten from Sunshine and how long he's had it. And if it's brand new data, why hasn't it been presented to the board already? I'm just a little uncomfortable about how this is playing out. I'm always interested in getting new facts and data. I'm just uncomfortable with how this is playing out here. So what, John has access to information that none of the rest of us have. It's a funny situation. And I don't think information about voting ages should be coming from John. It should be coming from our membership secretary. I don't know. I'm just uncomfortable with all of this. It makes me, I don't know how else to say it. It doesn't feel kosher to me. The whole thing.
All right. John Steinhardt. I'm going to ask everyone to try and be concise. We don't want to spend all our time talking about whether or not to see the.
So I'm happy to just drop this and talk through the whole thing, but I want to say that Arna is actually not correct in what she just said. So according to Oregon nonprofit law, membership data is a business record that every director is entitled to see. The fact that I took a look and condensed the data into a chart, you should say thanks for doing that, as opposed to I didn't bother, so you can't show it.
Let's not direct your comments directly.
And every other member. So, but I don't have to do this. That's fine.
Okay. I ask you not to, it's fine to, everything you said is fine, but you don't have to direct it to a specific member. John Alexander.
Yeah, I'm all for numbers and data, but I'm not sure how relevant it is to the motion. I see this motion being about whether we disenfranchise one person or we disenfranchise 20 people. So, or 100.
Kevin Levy.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I can see why folks are apprehensive, but it also seems that John's gonna tell us what's on that chart anyways. So we can either hear him say it or we can see it. So I feel like it kind of probably doesn't make a difference. Maybe it'll be easier for us to visualize it. Maybe he can tell us what's on it, and then maybe we can see it after that. And so I don't know, but just throwing that out there. So thanks.
Any other board discussion on whether or not to receive the presentation? George.
You're muted, George.
Muted, George.
I'm sorry. I want to see the presentation. I don't see any harm in it.
Thank you. John Govsky.
The suspense is killing me. Let's just see it.
Thank you. Paxton.
I'm really uncomfortable about the source of the data in that. Generally, to me, election databases are not really public instruments and shouldn't be dealt with in public, in my opinion. I have problems with the data that may or may not be coming out of this. I'm interested in it also, the data also, but I think it should be shared amongst the board first before it goes to wider distribution, particularly at a main board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. AJ.
Yeah, I know we want to, I know that people want to skip by this, but we have a procedure, an established procedure. If you want to do a presentation, you have to let the president know. I don't know why that procedure and that step is being ignored in this conversation. That's one of my jobs, you guys. I have to do that across the board for everybody. It's called fairness. If you want to do a presentation at this board meeting, you have to let me know ahead of time so I can prepare for that time on the agenda that I'm responsible for. And I don't think we should be having this discussion just overlooking that fact. It's not fair.
Is there any other discussion? Last call. We're voting on whether or not to receive the presentation, which John has clarified as a single chart. Sandra.
Yes.
George.
Yes.
Paxton.
No.
AJ.
No.
John Davis.
Yes.
John Steinhardt.
Yes.
John Govsky.
I abstain.
John Alexander,
No.
Teresa Vaughn,
Yes.
Arna,
No.
and Kevin.
Yes.
So if I am correct, that motion passes with 6 in favor, 3 opposed. And so there's, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favor, 1, 2, 3, 4 opposed. Excuse me. I've had 3 opposed. 4 opposed. So the motion fails with Paxton, AJ, John Alexander, and Arna voting no. So now we will go back to the main motion, and we are on to discussion. Is there any member input on the main motion, which is to change the voting age to 18 as presented in writing? Member input.
May I give a quick presentation of the motion first?
Sure. Sure. I wasn't sure we had. Go ahead.
Okay. I just want to say that some years back, the board hired a nonprofit Association of Oregon consultant to recommend changes to our organization. We've done some of the things they recommended and not others. This is one of the ones they recommended that we haven't gotten to yet. And as you know, I'm not a fan of kicking things down the road, so I figured it was time to get to it. And I have more to say, but I want to hear what the members say first. Thanks.
Thank you. So is there any member input? Raise your hand in chat. Member input on this bylaw change. Heather Kent.
I bet Spirit's hoping to speak too and can't raise her hand.
I got her on the list.
Got it. I would urge you all to support this motion. I think it makes complete sense because the people who are voting for board of directors members are voting for people who are responsible legally for a bunch of things for the organization. Since people who are under 18 can't be responsible for those things, they shouldn't be voting for the people who are responsible for those things. So that is my primary reason for that. I think it's super, super important in terms of contracts. Thanks.
Thank you, Heather. Spirit.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on the age thing. Personally, I absolutely do support this. I think it is okay to have more informed voting. And that is not to say that youth can't be informed. But by and large, while I was on the board, it was very rare that we heard from youth. I mean, very rare. Like I can remember 1, maybe 2 in my 4 years. I don't know how many voted. That being said, also, I feel like the board has an obligation to put checks and balances in place when we see there's been abuse of loopholes or where our membership has found loopholes to try to overturn or take over an election, such as what happened back in 2019, I believe. I have the screenshots here. I'm not going to share. But where we did have crews who were talking about having their youth vote. They were going to use their youth ballot to vote. And we were talking, I mean, young, like 10 and younger. So I think that knowing that information, it is irresponsible of a board not to put protections in place for our organization. We want informed voting. We do not want abuse of our bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah, okay, hold on. All right, here we go. Yeah, first issue here is a procedural issue. This motion as proposed would be in violation of Oregon law, specifically ORS 65.1442A, which requires a vote of the membership on any action or amendment to the Articles of Incorporation that would reduce or eliminate a member's right to vote. The term action in that statute is a distinct portion separate from amendments to the Articles of Incorporation. So there's two types of things that require a membership vote under that provision. One is amendments to the Articles of Incorporation. The other is actions. This would be an action that would in fact eliminate voting rights of some members. It's pretty clear that action has to have a meaning distinct from amendments to the Articles of Incorporation by the General Rule of Construction of Statutes, which is ORS 174.010, which requires that where there are several provisions or particulars, such construction is, if possible, to be adopted, as will give effect to all. And so to pretend that ORS 651442A applies only to amendments to the Articles of Incorporation is to simply strike out the word action. This isn't just my interpretation. I consulted with David Atkin, who is the director of the Center for Nonprofit Law in Eugene. He concurred entirely with my reading. He also pointed out that there is absolutely no reason why a nonprofit can't have members under the age of 18. Many do. And in fact, he pointed out that even directors could be under the age of 18, but that he would caution against a president or secretary being under the age of 18. Now, as to Heather's point, some years ago when I was on the board, a young woman under the age of 18 ran for the board, and the board determined, and I was on the board that voted for this, that because of the legal responsibility issues that Heather raised, that board members should be over the age of 18. And there was some pushback from the membership who felt that was unfair. But what I can tell you is not one person suggested that that young person shouldn't have the right to vote. And so the first problem you've got is passing this would be a bold-faced violation of Oregon law. And I don't know what kind of advice you're getting on this point, because the bylaws committee was cut out of this process. So I don't know what your lawyer's telling you. But if they are telling you that 651442A does not apply to this action, you're getting bad legal advice. And if you haven't asked them, what about ORS 174.010? Then you're poor consumers of legal advice, which is a problem when you have a board with no lawyers on it. But that being said, the merits, I would suggest to you there's a legal issue irrespective of the merits, and there are a considerable lack of merit to this. I did speak to the coordinator of the teen crew, one of them.
That's time.
Today.
That's time, LT.
Okay, well, she opposes it strongly.
That's time. So we're moving on to Ann.
I agree with everything that Lawrence Taylor said, and there were more than one thing in the NAO report that the board at the time did not feel like voting for or were applicable. I feel a 16-year-old can vote, and you have to be 18 to be on the board, period. Thank you.
Any other member input? Lisa Parker.
Yeah, so just finish up Lawrence's statement. The teen crew coordinator is opposed to this. But even if this were not illegal, which it is, for the board to make this decision, it really, I think, cuts the membership out of something that they ought to be included in. The members ought to be able to be the ones to decide this issue, regardless of what the law says, which the law says that the board cannot do this without a vote of the members. Thank you.
Thank you. And is there any other member input on this motion? Last call for member input. Last call for member input. I see none. We'll go to board discussion. Is there any board discussion? Raise your hand in chat if there's board discussion.
No board discussion.
John Steiner, Paxton.
Oops, I thought I was unmuted, but I wasn't. Anyway, I'm opposed to this motion. I really do believe that it will reduce and disenfranchise some of the younger members that are members, and would keep them from voting. The way it's written, I don't think it covers that, and I'd love to see it sent back to the bylaws committee for evaluation of that in particular. I personally, I believe I'm a fan of even letting 14-year-olds vote. They're fair members that have grown up in the fair and they understand it. I would be acceptable to 16. I think 18 is unreasonable in our organization, and I don't see. I have no problems with the age 18 being able to qualify for the board, which we passed, I think, quite a while back. Anyway, I would like to see more discussion on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And John Steinhardt.
Okay, so I want to start by saying this is not really something that I even want to be doing. This is not a hill that I really want to die on, but my highest priority as a board member, especially with our code of conduct, is to look out for the interests of the fair, and I need to be able to do that. One doesn't have to look very far today to see how bad actors can take over an organization, and I think my legal duty of care, irrespective of a code of conduct, obligates me to try to prevent that from happening here at the fair. A few years ago, I was pretty saddened when we had some of what I would consider bad actors encouraging people to sign up their minor children for membership and to vote on their behalf in order to sway an election. While this may have been in the selfish interest of these folks, I don't see it as being in the best interest of the Oregon Country Fair. It's for this reason that I support a membership age of 18 so that those who are voting are more likely to be independent. This is one of these cases where I unfortunately have to say, sorry kids, some adults messed it up for you. In addition, there is somebody that shows up at troubleshooting regularly every year and purchases about 50 teen wristbands for their church group kids. Under our current policies, they're all able to become voting members. While they haven't yet done so, I don't think it's in our best interest to allow folks who are really not part of our event on a lark to go vote for people that they have no idea what they're doing. It's not good for our organization. When I was growing up, my parents often told a lot of other people what I wanted without ever consulting me. I'm hearing a lot of adults saying that what their kids want here, but where are the kids? I don't see a single minor speaking up, 16-year-old, 17-year-old, 14. I haven't seen a single one in a board meeting since I've been on the board, much less here tonight. I see parents saying, I want my kid to be able to vote, but I don't see their kids. So I question how engaged the kids are. I mean, I could show you a nice chart if I was allowed. It would show you how many kids vote and how many might get disenfranchised by this motion. I think I'll just leave it at Jerry Garcia could count them on one hand and have fingers left over. So let's see, as far as the scary sounding TV lawyering Gish Gallop stuff, it's completely off base. I mean, first of all, this interpretation is basically coming from the person that wrote the protected section of our bylaws.
Okay, so let's avoid characterizing individuals, please. Here, just speak to the.
Okay, so we have an alternative interpretation here from that says that we actually didn't need to write the protected section of the bylaws. So one of these two positions is right and wrong, and I can't really tell which is which. But fundamentally, what we're doing is not illegal because we are not changing any of the voting rights of members. What this motion is to change the definition of who gets to become a member. We are not touching voting rights at all. So all of the scary sounding Gish Gallop is just, it's just scare tactic. It's got nothing to do with what we're doing tonight. And I actually am kind of glad that we don't have lawyers on the board, because when we get free legal advice, there's no accountability. This is actually why we pay attorneys, because they're actually accountable for what they say. When somebody is saying something just because they feel like it, there's no accountability, and I can't treat it nearly as seriously as I can treat the attorneys that we paid for who said what we're doing is okay.
Got a point
anyway,
of order.
That's about it.
Thank you, John Steinhardt, or excuse me, John Alexander.
Yeah, and Stephen, I really appreciate it's a hard job you've got there, but I think that a point of order needs to be addressed here about personally attacking people, or not attacking. That's not the right word. I was quoted with that last time. It didn't go up very well. Personally going after individuals that are doing their best to just participate in this process. It's not personal. I think that even being addressed as whether this is illegal or not should make us pause about whether we're doing this and our due diligence, and certainly not feel that we need to push something forward. I also think if you look at the new business, there's new business that really does the right thing on the table for the next time we come, which is to take it to the membership. So we've had a joint committee making recommendations about this. Sounds like they haven't been involved in the most recent versions of this. I remember 2 different work sessions on this. And during those work sessions, there was considerable discussion about eligibility versus voting rights. But at the end of the day, the intention of the bylaws is to ensure that if anybody potentially is disenfranchised by a decision, that vote go to the membership. So I just don't even understand why we're even talking about this. We should put this off and this should be taken to the membership. If it has any question as to whether there's anybody who can currently vote right now, and when we're done making this motion and it passes, they can't vote anymore, then we've been disenfranchised a member, and that's not okay. And any amendments to this motion at this point are inappropriate because it's a bylaws related motion, and so it would need to be published for another month or whatever our rules are. So I'm just not really clear about why we're even talking about this anymore. I'm a total no on this. This needs to go to membership. And our kids work hard. My kids worked hard, and we're trying to have a better engaged community and a better engaged society. And so I encourage our children to get involved, though I probably understand I can't get my kids to watch these things yet. So hopefully one day.
Okay, we need to have a time check here. There are 9 minutes left in the meeting. Is there an objection to extending the meeting for 15 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to vote on whether or not to extend the meeting for 15 minutes. Sandra?
Yes.
George?
No.
Paxton?
Yes.
AJ?
Yes.
John Davis?
Yes.
John Steinhardt?
Yes.
John Govsky?
Yes.
John Alexander?
No.
Teresa Vaughn?
No.
Arna?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
The motion to extend the meeting passes with George, John Alexander, and Teresa Vaughn voting no. And we will go to the next person on stack, which is Arna. And I will ask everyone to try and be mindful of the time and be concise.
Okay, I understand that there have been few teens voting, but that doesn't matter to me. It's this motion will disenfranchise those kids who have been voting. And I'm just not in favor of that. I also think that people under 18 are very rational and can vote reasonably. Having grandkids that age, I get their intellect, they can do this. I'm not into disenfranchising people. And I'm also think this is a membership question. I think that this is something that we should refer to the membership. And I think as John Alexander mentioned, there is another motion under new business to refer this to the membership. And I think that's where it belongs. I know that the membership, elects us to make decisions, but we still are a membership organization. And I believe there are some decisions that should go to the membership. And I think this is one of them, because I don't think they can make a wrong decision on this. I don't think there are wrong decisions here. And I want to encourage young people to vote. We want younger people to take over the fair. Let's start getting them involved, starting to think about all of this. And a lot of schools don't really even teach civics anymore. Let's let them get some education at the fair and how to vote, how to understand organizations and nonprofit organizations. So I am firmly opposed to this motion, and we'll be voting no on it.
Thank you. I have Sandra next.
Yeah, I think that it's I've thought about this a lot, and I think that everything that we do for one thing, I think there's a big difference between running the nonprofit and being involved in the fair. The nonprofit is much more complex. There are different kinds of requirements there, and I think that I think that it takes a certain amount of sophistication and life experience to really fully form good opinions about that. I'm in favor of 18. I think it's kind of a common sense. That's the age of majority, and in fact, we treat all of the kids at the fair in a different way. If they're under 18, they can't sign themselves in without a responsible adult. They get a special pass called the Teen Pass, which costs $60 instead of $160. They don't have to work. They can work through Teen Crew, but they're supervised there. They can't be on a crew until they're 18. And according to our attorney, their parents have to give them permission to become members. So that means their parents can also, not give them permission to become members. And our attorney, whose advice we pay for, and who has given us advice on the bylaws all the way along, and including this, has, it's her opinion that this is not something that has to go to the membership, that this is a decision that the board can make, because doesn't have anything to do with it isn't a voting right. It isn't what they're voting on. It's voting eligibility. And so our own attorney, I think, we've used her advice all the way through and all these bylaw revisions, and I am in favor of continuing to use the opinion of the attorney that knows our organization the best. So, and there's another thing on here too that I think is important, is when people sign up to be members, they have to agree to abide by the code of conduct. And as a 16 or 17-year-old, they can't be held accountable for that. Because they can't sign contracts. So I think there's a lot of reasons in the real world why, all of this stuff goes away if you have an age eligibility of 18 years old. And there's a lot of, exceptions for, kids that are younger. So I think it's the smart thing to do, and I think it's a sensible thing to do, and it is the norm. So I'm in favor of 18, and I hope that we pass it. So thank you.
Thank you. We have 15 minutes left. John Govsky.
I've kind of gone back and forth on this, but given that, well, to make things short, I think this is something that we should probably give to the membership to vote on. And given that we have a motion next month to look at that, I would vote no on this right now. I'll just stop there. Thanks.
Thank you. Kevin Levy.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth about this thing too. It's really, 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds. I think it makes sense probably when I think about the organization, 18, and kind of like everything with Sandra, echoing everything Sandra said as far as separation of what teens can do, what teens can't, as well as their presence in general. If what John's saying is barely anybody voted at all, then, it's not a thing, but it's also really, I think about it going to the membership, and if we had to do that, we have to do that. But also it feels like, we're getting a lot of finger pointing guilt going around, so to speak. No offense to anybody, but like I'm hearing a lot of like, we're doing some terrible things by disenfranchising folks or whatever. So that means we just get to allow the membership to disenfranchise each other. I'm worried that that's going to get out there and become divisive for no reason, maybe. And as well as just have folks just say, well, I don't want to offend anyone or whatever. And so, being on a board means making decisions that aren't always awesome. And that's the job. And so, it's a tough one. It is, but definitely, I think we should stick with the 18 and go from there. I think it makes sense. So thanks.
Okay, and now we have 15 minutes left. So just a reminder, Arna.
I just want to clarify a couple of things in response to what Sandra said. Anybody who gets a wristband is agreeing to our code of conduct. That's part of getting a wristband. When you sign for a wristband, you're agreeing to our code of conduct. So it doesn't matter what age you are have already agreed to that. And so you are signing for that and have made that. And what our attorney said was that any age can vote. She recommended that we might want to get parents' permission to have minors become members, but she said it was not required either. It was just, I just read it, Sandra. It was not, she recommends it, not requires it. It is a simple enough thing to do to put a parent signature on a membership form. But it was not required. She just recommends it. So I don't think those are actually good arguments against this. And I think the biggest arguments for this motion, and I do still think the biggest argument against this motion is that it is a membership question and it should go to the membership. So thanks.
Thank you. AJ.
Yeah, I agree with what Kevin said. I don't like the direction of this conversation. And that if you're for membership, if you're against, you're disenfranchising. That language in this meeting alone is concerning for me as well. Thank you for saying that out loud, Kevin. I would also mention that I think we're talking about 16 and 18, and as it stands now, 10-year-olds can vote.
No, they
Right?
can't.
Like,
No.
is it as it stands now? If they have a membership,
Please,
the
so
parents,
pause. Please don't shake your head or make gestures or interrupt in that fashion. It's like trying to draw speakership to yourself. I'm sorry, AJ. Please continue.
sorry, I might have got the number wrong, but it's younger than 16 at this point. So we keep saying 16 and 18, but technically at this point, younger than 16 can vote. And so I want to be clear about what is the message that we're sending here, right? Is it that everybody is agreeing that 16 is the youngest we want to go, or is it like, what is the actual question? And so I tend to lean towards the 18, and I've got some skin in the game. I think I have a 16-year-old who's been a part of the fair his whole life. I brought him here when he was 6 months old, and he's been coming every year and getting a pass every year. And yeah, he knows about some things, and his dad is the president of the organization. He knows some things. But would I consider him an informed voter when it comes to all the things that is board? No, I would not consider him an informed voter. He's a child. He enjoys going to the fair with his friends and seeing all the things. And at 16 years old, he still is not aware of governance and how that works. And so I think we need to be having those kind of conversations. And it's important. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We have 11 minutes left. John Alexander, I'll ask.
Yeah, so I think that it's okay for us to disagree on this thing. I think we're having a pretty good conversation. If disenfranchised is a hot term, I understand that, but I want to be careful in thinking about that. I think villainizing individuals for what they said is different than us just having a heated conversation about this. The one concern I have is if this motion passes, there will be people who voted last year that will not be allowed to vote this year. And that seems to me to be a potentially legal issue. I think citing our lawyers is important because we go to lawyers and we seek an opinion from lawyers that supports some position that we have. I understand that our lawyer has actually also, in a previous opinion, potentially told us that this might be something that needs to go to membership. So it really sometimes depends on the way you phrase things for lawyers and what you're hiring lawyers to do. And I love lawyers because my kid is one and she's going to be old enough to vote no matter what. But I think that we would need to amend this to put a clause in there that says anybody who's already voted gets to still vote. But then if we're amending a bylaw change, it would need to wait for a month anyway. So I encourage us not to take somebody who's already voted their voting rights away without taking it to the membership.
Okay.
And that's what would happen, even if it's one person today, if this goes for a yes.
So there's 10 minutes left. As a point of order, you can amend this by the notice is to see that people who are interested in that conversation have the opportunity to attend. But we have already established that bylaw changes can be amended at the meeting because everyone knows what subject about bylaws is coming to the meeting. Going forward, it's Sandra.
Can I just point of order that or no? I'll let it go.
We have to.
Just go.
Sandra, we got 10 minutes. Yeah, you're muted.
Yeah, I lost track of what I was saying a little bit here with all of this back and forth. But I wanted to say that I think it's really important to keep in mind that even to be on site, that 16 and 17-year-olds have to have a parental or responsible party sign for them. That means that they're under the control of that person and of that parent or that significant other. I mean, I'm sorry about that. I mean, I'm getting tired of the responsible adult. And the same thing goes for the voting, you know, when their parents have to sign off on it. And if it's recommended by our attorney, I think it's a good idea to do that. You know, that's how I take those recommendations. And it just, you know, we treat them differently. You know, we're trying to engage them in the organization. We want them to be there. We want them to participate. We're trying to give them the opportunities to do that in a way that's safe and careful, you know, so that their parents can feel good about them being there and that they grow to love the fair because they are going to take it over in a few years. And, you know, I think we treat them differently for very good reasons, you know, and then just throwing them into the deep end, just voting isn't going to make you a good voter. You know, that takes a lot of education and a lot of other things that go with that. So kind of throwing these kids into the deep end of the pool and say, hey, go vote for things that you really probably don't know a whole lot about. Maybe you do. Some kids are really engaged, but, you know, in terms of, you know, from what I've, you know, Stephen Dyerkoff, a report that he wrote last year, I think, said that there were 40 kids or 35 or some number in that range of kids who had signed up to be members, and none of them voted. So I don't think there's a great push by the kids themselves to vote. I guess last year there was something like 5 who voted, and 3 of those are going to be 18 this year. So there's only 2 that you know, would not be eligible under this rule and this policy. But every time you pass a policy, there's always something that it's restricting or making available. So, you know, it's not like you're not out there to disenfranchise people. And I do think that that is a one of those trigger words to use, because obviously we're not trying to disenfranchise people. We're trying to expand the number of people who are voting by doing the hybrid voting. We put a lot of energy into that. And I think it's going to bring a lot of new voters and a lot of young new voters. So I really do think that that is kind of unfair. You know, I don't think people are trying to restrict voters or make it hard for them. We're trying to make it easy.
We're down to 6 minutes, Sandra.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to ask you be brief. John Steinhardt.
Okay, so AJ asked, what's the message here? Okay, to me, again, I'm not doing this to be, I knew this would be an unpopular motion, but I'm on the board to protect the Oregon Country Fair, not to be popular. If I'm popular as a side effect, that's great. But the message here is that protecting the Oregon Country Fair is more important than any one person's vote. I think that's the way I would say it. That we're in a world right now where bad actors have figured out how to go screw up other people's organizations. And I really don't want that to happen to the Oregon Country Fair. So that's why I put this forth. A couple of other comments. So I have worked very closely with Team Crew for close to 20 years now, including handling all the Team Crew applications. We used to have a question on the Team Crew application. Are you interested in fair governance? And Lori took that off because nobody was. And I know she really wants teams to vote, and she's really talked to them about voting, but they're not voting. As to John's point about amending to make sure anybody that might lose their vote because of this, I'd really like to see that, but I believe that ends up creating a second class of membership for us. And so we can't do it given the way our bylaws are written. So, again, I'm not here to disenfranchise anybody. I'm here to try to protect the Oregon Country Fair, which I believe is my job in the best way I can. If you don't think that's the way we should be doing it, that's fine with me. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. We're gonna go to Paxton, and if anyone else wants to speak after this, we're gonna have to extend the meeting. I'll ask you to be brief, Paxton.
Yes. The rumors about age 10 voting never happened. I mean, they may have been threats, but the actual historic age of membership is 14. That's what when you can get a wristband. You have to have a wristband, and that's pretty well defined. So that's to me a specious argument about earlier than 14. And we're actually, I'm personally happy with 14 because I trust our young people that have grown up in the fair. If they want to vote, they get involved. And I think I don't like to act from fear. I think that this discussion, I think I'm in favor of doing this on the ballot, pushing it to the ballot. So I look forward to next month's motion.
Okay, John Alexander raises his hand, so I'm going to go to a vote to extend this meeting 15 more minutes.
It'd be 15 seconds.
If you can be 15 seconds and nobody else wants to speak.
My fear is that if there's any chances this is illegal, we need to vote no on this. And it's suggested that this might be illegal.
Is there any other discussion? If not, we're going to proceed to a vote. No, there's no point of order on voting age, Spirit. So we're going to proceed to a vote on the main motion. John, do you want to vote on extending the meeting?
No, I wanted to.
Everybody can't keep going 15 seconds, and we're down to a minute. So we're going to vote on whether or not to extend. We don't have to use it all, but we're going to vote on whether or not to extend the meeting 15 minutes. Sandra?
No.
George?
No.
Paxton? If the meeting doesn't get extended, I think the motion dies. AJ?
Yes.
John Davis?
No.
I have a point of order on that, though, Stephen. If you're saying if we don't extend the meeting, the motion dies, I think we should know that before we vote.
Well, so we have theoretically, we have 1 minute left, and the meeting, nothing has pushed it to next meeting. There isn't a policy on it. And so.
Well, I would vote to extend it by 5 minutes.
5 minutes is fine. Let's go for 5 minutes. Sandra, yes?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Paxton?
Yes.
AJ?
Yes.
John Davis?
Yes.
John Steinhardt,
Yes.
John Govsky,
Yes to 5.
John Alexander,
Nope.
Teresa Vaughn,
Yes.
Arna,
Yes.
Or 5A.
Kevin.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion passes with John Alexander voting no. That's 5 minutes. I'm going to ask John Steinhardt to keep it under a minute.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify, which I guess Spirit just put in the chat, that right now you can become a voting member at 13. It used to be, I think, 11, back when we sold youth wristbands. And I would ask, I don't know what the process is here, that if we don't finish this discussion tonight, that this be moved to the first item of business at the next meeting.
It'd be nice if we had a specific procedure for that. So I'm seeing no other discussion. No one's raised their hand. We're going to proceed to a vote on the main motion. This is on the bylaw change. Sandra,
Yes, yes.
and George,
Yes.
Paxton,
No.
AJ,
Yes.
John Davis,
Yes.
John Steinhardt,
Yes.
John Govsky,
No.
John Alexander,
No.
Teresa Vaughn,
No.
Arna,
No.
and Kevin.
Yes.
The motion fails with Paxton, John Govsky, John Alexander, Teresa Vaughn, and Arna voting no. And with that, we have concluded. New business for next meeting is the appointment of Tash Wesp to the Craft Committee, sponsored by Arna Shaw, John Govsky, and AJ Jackson, and placing a question before the membership for a vote in the 2025 annual election. Arna Shaw, Teresa Vaughn, John Alexander, John Govsky, and Paxton. Next board meeting is Sunday, June 29th, 2025 at 4 p.m. via Zoom. And we don't really have time for meeting evaluation. And so I'm going to go to President's Piece for 3 minutes.
Thank you all for participating. Have a great and lovely night. Be safe.
Thank you. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.
Night.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, y'all.
Night.
Thanks for your time. See you
Thanks
next
for coming,
Thank you.
Teresa, if you're still here.
Yeah, T. Oh my gosh.